Dr. Umar Johnson spoke on Nicki Minaj's recent comments that seemed to lean in support of Donald Trump, and the way he broke it down was unexpected. Instead of reacting to the surface-level idea of celebrity political opinions, he connected her stance to something much bigger: U.S. and Venezuela relations.
Whenever they try to act like race don't matter, that's exactly when they're about to become more racist. Now, I want to draw a parallel to this, Art, because right now, Donald Trump is waging war against Venezuela. Even though war can only be declared by Congress, Donald Trump has taken it upon himself to wage war against the Venezuelan government. Now, how does this relate to Nicki Minaj? I'm going to tell you. Nicki Minaj, her parents and herself, they're from Trinidad and Tobago. If I'm not mistaken, Nicki Minaj may have been born in Trinidad or Tobago. If she wasn't, at least her parents were. At least her father was. Rest in peace to him, and condolences to the family for their loss of her father. Nobody should ever lose their life in that manner. So Nicki Minaj carries within her the DNA of the East Indian people and the African people. And my question to Sister Nicki Minaj, and I hesitate to call her sister, but I'm going to do it anyway, because until I get clarity from her, I'm not going to assume the worst. But a question I would need to ask Nicki Minaj, Art: do you primarily identify as a black woman, or do you primarily identify as an East Indian? And the reason I gotta ask her that, Art, not only is she turning her back on the same Black America that made her famous, not only is she turning her back on the same Black America that made her famous, Art, but right now, Donald Trump has carried out 29 different strikes on Venezuelan seagoing vessels, Art. The Caribbean Sea, Donald Trump has seized oil tankers from Venezuela. He has murdered at least 105 Venezuelans. Allegedly, that's what the media is reporting. There's only one Caribbean country, Art, that is standing in solidarity with Donald Trump. Guess who it is? Trinidad and Tobago. The Prime Minister of Trinidad, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Nicki Minaj's ancestral homeland. Well, technically your ancestral homeland is Africa, okay? But the birthland of her parents and maybe herself, Trinidad and Tobago, they are the only Caribbean country, or should I say the main Caribbean country, standing in solidarity with Donald Trump's unilateral and illegal move to declare war on Venezuela without the approval of the U.S. Congress. But Prime Minister Kamala of Trinidad and Tobago is an East Indian. So even though the population of Trinidad and Tobago, Art, is 40% black, it's also 40% East Indian, and it's 20% mixed. And I've been to Trinidad and Tobago. And do you know what I was told by the Trinidadian and Tobagan Africans there? Our black brothers and sisters, they told me that Trinidad and Tobago is dominated by the East Indians. They told me that they are racist, that they control the import and export. They told me that they control the drug trade. They told me that they control the used car industry. I was even told in Trinidad and Tobago by our black brothers and sisters, our Trinidadian African brothers and sisters, that if an ethnic war broke out, if a race war broke out in Trinidad and Tobago between the blacks and the East Indians, we would probably lose. Because even though we're 40% of the population and they're 40% of the population, they control the entire infrastructure, Art. So when I say I would like to respectfully know whether or not Sister Nicki Minaj identifies as an East Indian or an African, that's not just for American African purposes, Art. That's for Trinidadian African purposes, because I need to know if she identifies with the oppressed black people of Trinidad and Tobago, who are being oppressed by who? East Indians. Remember, Art, when the white man left the Caribbean, he put the East Indians in charge. A lot of people don't know that. When the white man left the Caribbean to make sure black people would never get sole control of their island, He left East Indians in charge and he left Chinese in charge. And if you go to almost any Caribbean island today, you will find that either the East Indians or the Chinese are doing better than black people, even if there's more black people on the island. Trinidad and Tobago is unique because you have just as much East Indians as you have Africans. So I need to know if Nicki Minaj stands with the East Indians of Trinidad and Tobago who are oppressing our brothers and sisters on that island, or does she stand with her Trinidadian African brothers and sisters, as do I?
Hearing him make that connection made me look at her comments in a completely different way, because it wasn't just about Trump. It was about how global political power shapes public figures and their alignment. What caught my attention even more was when he brought up identity. He said if he ever had the chance to talk to Nicki directly, he would want to ask her how she identifies, whether she sees herself primarily as a black woman or as East Indian, because he feels that identity shapes perspective. And when he said that, it made me think about how much background, culture, and roots can influence the way someone interprets political dynamics. Nicki is a global artist with roots in multiple cultures, and that alone puts her in a unique position. So when Dr. Umar questioned how her identity aligns with her political commentary, it wasn't an attack. It was a deeper question about alignment, power, and influence. To me, the biggest takeaway from what he said wasn't about choosing sides politically. It was about understanding that people speak from their worldview, and that worldview is built from heritage, upbringing, cultural influence, and personal ambition. Dr. Umar was essentially saying, before judging her stance, understand the lens she's viewing the world through. And honestly, that angle makes her recent comments far more layered than people assumed.
Identify as an East Indian. And the reason I gotta ask her that, Art, not only is she turning her back on the same Black America that made her famous, not only is she turning her back on the same Black America that made her famous, Art, but right now Donald Trump has carried out 29 different strikes on Venezuelan seagoing vessels, Art. The Caribbean Sea, Donald Trump has seized oil tankers from Venezuela. He has murdered at least 105 Venezuelans. Allegedly, that's what the media is reporting. There's only one Caribbean country, Art, that is standing in solidarity with Donald Trump. Guess who it is? Trinidad and Tobago. The Prime Minister of Trinidad, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Nicki Minaj's ancestral homeland. Well, technically,